Hello and hi everyone. So welcome to part 2 of chapter 5. Okay, so we're going to look more on the selection structure. Okay. So, most of the time, the find command can and should be used instead of an if statement. However, there are certain situations where the if statement is required. Okay, so we are going to look more on the if statement in this video. So first, I'm going to introduce you to the simple if statement. A simple if statement has this following form. If followed by the comparison statements and then end with this and word. So for a simple if statement, if the comparison, which is a logical expression, is true, the statements between the if statement and the and statement are executed. If the comparison is false, the program jumps immediately to the statement following and. Therefore, it is a good programming practice to indent the statements within an if structure for readability. However, recall that MATLAB will often ignore the white space, so your programs will run regardless of whether you do or you do not indent any of your lines of code. So let's see this simple example of an if statement. If G less than 50 is the comparison, and then following the comparison is the statements. So if we interpret this if statement, if G is less than 50, display G is a small value equal to on command window, and then display the value of G. However, if the comparison G less than 50 is false, then the program will not execute this display command and straightly end the program. Let's see this example on a MATLAB editor. Okay, so here I'm going to type the simple if statement. So if G is less than 50, this is the comparison. Display G is a small value equal to display G, and then make sure you end with this end word. Okay, we'll run our codes here. So since G that we defined earlier is 40, so 40 is less than 50, so the results of this comparison is true. Because the comparison is true, this display statement is displayed on the command window. What happens if the result for the comparison is false? So we choose another value which is not less than 50. Let's try run it again. So there is nothing happen, okay, because since the result of this comparison is false, MATLAB straightly end this program. Okay, dia tak execute this to display command. The thing is, for if statements, the statement is easy to interpret. If, let's say our example previously, G is a scalar. So what does an if statement mean if the comparison includes a matrix? So if, let's get back to our example here. If G here is not a scalar, then the if statement considers the comparison true only if it is true for every element. Therefore, if we try to define G from 30, 55 and 10 here, what will happen is nothing will happen. Nothing will be displayed on the command window. Okay, I can show you now. G is $30, $55 and $10. Nothing will be printed out on command window. This is because, okay, for each element of G, not all comparison is true for every element. Okay, so 30 is less than 50, yes. 55 is not, 10 is less than 50, yes. Okay, only 2 out of these 3 comparison is true. Therefore, MATLAB consider the whole comparison is false. Okay, so when you are doing comparison with an if statement involving matrix, you have to remember that MATLAB only consider the comparison true only if it is true for every element. Okay, so since there is only one false statement, the code inside this if statement will not be executed. Okay, because MATLAB consider the whole, okay, the whole G comparison here as false. Okay, let's try another example. So this time we modified the comparison if G less than 70. So now this statement is true because all of the elements in G are less than 70. Okay, so that is different. That is the difference of if statements between scalars and vectors. Okay, now the simple if triggers the execution of a block of code if a condition is true, and to skip those steps, if the condition is false. Okay, so if it is false, that block of code is skipped and then the program continues without doing anything. So what if instead you want to execute an alternate set of code if the condition is false? Okay, so right now, with the if statement, what happened is, okay, so here imagine this is the input. Okay, so then this is for decision making, this is the logical expression. Okay, so if the result of this logical expression or comparison is true, so MATLAB will execute this. This is the statement. Okay, so otherwise, if the result of the logical expression, or we call it comparison, is false, what will happen is it will strictly jump to this end here. Alright, so what if instead you want to execute and another set of code if the condition is false? So instead of directly jump to the ending the program, we want to execute another set of code. So that is when we use the if else structure. Okay, so although the simple if allow us to execute a series of statements if a condition is true and then skip if it is false, we want to do something else, okay, that allow us to execute another set of statement if the comparison is true and then execute another set of statement if that comparison is false. Okay, so this is an expand of the if statement. So we just include another set of code to be executed if the result of the comparison is false. Okay, so suppose this is an example. So suppose you want to take the logarithm of a variable x. So you know from your basic algebra class that the input to the log function must be greater than 0. Okay, so we want to check to see if the input is positive. So if the input is positive, MATLAB will calculate the natural log. So if it isn't, send an error message to the screen. Okay, so basically, okay, what will happen is, so where is the pen? Yeah, so we have this input and then we're going to check the comparison. Is the input is positive, so if it is true, calculate the natural log. If it's false, going to send an error message. So display error message lah. Display error. Okay, and then and Okay, so let's get back to our editor file. Okay, so X is we want to check the input of X whether it is positive or negative. Okay, so since natural log can be calculated for positive value kan, log lah maksudnya. So enter a value of X greater than 0. Then if X is, this is the comparison. So if we want to check whether dia positif ke tak kan. So macam mana kita nak tahu dia positif? So any value above than 0 will be positive number. If X is greater than 0, so execute the calculation for natural log. Else is for when the comparison is false. So when the comparison is false, display this warning. The input to the log function must be positive. And then make sure to end your if else statement with this end word. Okay, so let's clear our command window and then run this section. So I'm going to, okay, salah je, tak apa. I'm going to input a positive value. Okay, next I'm going to try this again, but this time I'm going to try a negative value. Okay, so you can see that this error statement is displayed on the command window. Okay, so I hope you understand that this portion here will only be executed if this comparison results is true. Otherwise, okay, it will jump to this else portion, okay, else part, where it will display this warning on command window. Okay, so the if else structure. So obviously we can nest, okay, we can combine, we can nest several levels of if else statements, but it might be difficult to determine which logical expressions must be true or false in order to execute each set of statement. So therefore, the if else is useful when we want to define multiple selection criteria. For example, let's consider a programming code to determine if an applicant is eligible to drive. Okay, so here is the flow chart. So in this example of multiple criteria for determining driver's license, okay, based on the applicant's age, we can see from the flow chart here that MATLAB first will check whether to see the age is below 16. So if the comparison is true, the program will execute this line. Okay, so dia akan display sorry you have to wait, and then exit the if structure. So end ni maksudnya dia keluar daripada program tu, dia exit from the if structure. However, okay, let's say the applicant's age past the first comparison. Okay, maksudnya age ni higher than 16. Okay, so dia akan enter the else if structure. So inside this else if structure, MATLAB will check to see if the age is below 18 this time. Okay, and then the program will continue through the if structure until it finally find a true comparison. So if the first pass ni dia false comparison, dia enter age below 18, and then if it is true, dia akan execute this you may have a youth license and then exit the program. Okay, let's say if age is below 18 false, so dia akan enter another else if structure, and then if it is true, MATLAB will issue this warning on this statement on command window. However, if the comparison is false, it will enter the else structure. Okay, under this else structure, there is no comparison needed. Okay, because this else structure will execute after the comparison is false. Okay, because comparison for here is false, dia directly akan execute this else structure. So we can see that the use of diamond shape here indicate the selection structure. Okay, so let's show on our editor file. Okay, so let's try age is 30. Sorry, you have to wait. Yes. Okay, so when age is 30, you may have a standard license. Okay, so kita check one by one lah for each criteria. Okay, kita start dengan below 16 dulu lah. Age 15. Sorry, you have to wait. Below 18, but below 18 but higher than 16, you may have a youth license. Between 18 to 70, you may have a standard license, and more than 70. Driver over 70 require a special license. Okay, so this is very simple if the age is a scalar. But what if the age is a matrix? Okay, let's try consider this if else structure with a matrix value. So the first comparison, so when we consider this age matrix, okay, the first comparison, which is the if age is less than 16, is false because it's not true for every element in the array. Okay, you tengok kita ada 5 different array. The first one is 15. Yang the first one ni dah false. So the second comparison, else if age less than 18, is also false. The second comparison is also false because the comparison is not true for every element. Okay, so you have to remember anything when we are doing comparison involving an array or matrix or vector, the comparison is only true if the results for each element of that array is true. Okay, so in this example, first comparison is false, second comparison is false, the third comparison is false as well because again not all of the edges are below 70. Okay, there ada satu elemen yang above 70. So we get these results which is drivers over 70 require a special license. Okay, this kind of results that won't please the other drivers. Okay, maybe kita boleh try kalau kita nak tengok what are the ones that with the true comparison. Maybe kita try change with 65 and then you may have a standard license. So kita boleh tahu yang for standard license ni, okay, because if the result of the comparison is true for all elements, baru kita akan dapat display this else if statement. So okay, as I show you previously, always make sure to test your program. Okay, make sure that you have covered all the possible calculational parts. So maksudnya kalau dekat sini kita ada few if, else ni, make sure you test dia with age below 15, below 16, below 18, below 70. Jangan test dengan satu number saja. Okay, then as a general rule, I think by now, okay, since saya dah tunjuk perbezaan bila kita buat if else structure with scalar and matrix, so kita tahu sekarang that the else if structure works well with scalars, but for vectors or arrays you may use the find function atau find command. You can also combine the if structure with a repetition structure. Okay, repetition structure nanti kita akan tengok, kita akan belajar on the next chapter. Okay, so I'll show you what are the alternative for this. Okay, since kita tak dapat, okay, untuk evaluate comparison untuk each element here, okay, for this age array, so kita boleh buat alternatively use find command with this array of edges. Okay, so to do that, so we're going to start with the same age array and then kita akan buat few set. Okay, sebab dia ada few kriteria tadi kan. So set 1, we're going to find age that is below than 60. Okay, so obviously kita akan buat 4 different sets. Set 1, set 2, set 3, set 4 for different criteria. The first one below 16. This one is greater than equal to 16 and so kita combine relational and logical operator. Age below than 18 and this one is for age that is greater than or equal 18 and age that is below 70. Okay, so the last criteria is set 4, find age greater than or equal to 70. Okay, next, can use the fprintf command Okay, to display this warning statement. Okay, make sure kalau you nak guna apostrophe ni, you kena buat double apostrophe. Okay, so from here, sorry you have to wait. This is for age set 1. So, if the age is below 16, okay, dia akan display this statement. Okay, so kita try run and then from command window, kita dapat lah. For the 15, sorry you have to wait, you only 15. You may have a youth license for 17, for 25 you may have standard license, 55 also standard license, 65 also standard license. Maybe kita try 75. Yes. Okay, kita clearkan and then kita run semula. Okay, so kita nampak lah. So, inilah saya masukkan yang kita kena test for each category. So, nampak tak ada kategori sorry, 15, 17, 25, 55, standard, youth, sorry, and then special license. Okay, since every fine in this sequence is evaluated, so it is necessary to specify the range completely. Okay, maybe you rasa confused kan, kenapa saya tambah range ni kan, age that is greater than and equal to 16 and less than 18. Okay, because kita nak evaluate each range of age. Okay, although kalau kita semak dekat kita punya flowchart ni, kita hanya ada less than 16, less than 18. Tapi kalau greater than 16 and less than 18, no, kita evaluate juga. Okay, so for this second set, kita akan dapat youth license. Okay, because it is less than 18. Okay, so set 3 ni adalah untuk standard license. Okay, so that is all for the second selection structure, which is the if, else, and else if structures.